Heard a little talk around town today through various media people on the radio and on TV that maybe the Blackhawks against the North Stars game tonight has lost a little bit of its luster because first place has been decided. Well, you talk to the two teams, they'll give you a little different story. Hello again, everybody. Pat Foley from Chicago Stadium, where the Norris Division champion Chicago Blackhawks, I like the way that sounds, take on the Minnesota North Stars for the final time during the regular season this year. The Blackhawks, by virtue of the North Stars' loss last night, have officially been the winners now of the Norris Division championship. No way Minnesota can overtake Chicago. So in that sense, the game, the significance of the game does not have any bearing on the first place situation in the Norris Division. But these teams don't like each other. There's a very good chance they could meet in the second round of the playoffs, and there probably are still a few points to be proven to one another. So I would imagine that the intensity level here will be just as high as it would be if first place was still up for grabs. We'll see what happens. The Blackhawks and the North Stars will have some more information after this timeout on IND. The Blackhawks have won the Norris Division championship, but the Minnesota North Stars have had the better of this series between the two teams. The Blackhawks with 2 wins so far, Minnesota with 4, and there's been 1 tie. The North Stars are the only team to win on 4 and ice the last time they were here in Chicago Stadium. Don Beaupre was magnificent in goal, and Minnesota came away with a 2-1 victory. The Hawks have not won in Minnesota. They'll not get another chance to unless the teams would meet in the playoffs. The best the Hawks could do up there was a 4-4 tie on Darryl Sutter's goal with 20 seconds left in the game. So the Blackhawks and the North Stars, the Hawks hoping to at least close up or get a little closer in the season series, as well as establish themselves should these teams meet in the playoffs. We'll hear from Orval Tessier after this timeout on WIND.
Well, Orval, you know, I'm listening to the radio this morning, a couple of sportscasts, and there were a few fellows who made the comment to the extent that, well, the Blackhawk North Star game tonight has lost a little bit of its luster because the championship has been decided already. Well, I got to believe that there are going to be 2 pretty hungry hockey teams out there, because you got to figure percentage-wise that they're going to meet in the playoffs eventually, and I would think there's still some points to be proven yet.
Well, Pat, I have to fully agree with you. I don't think you're ever going to see a North Star Blackhawk game that means nothing. To put it the right way, I don't think there's any love lost between both organizations. I think both respect each other's ability, and nobody'd ever want to give an inch to the opposition. To say that it has taken something away from the game by them losing last night, it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch. I had my first good night's sleep since last September the 12th. I'll have about another 2 nights, and then it'll start all over again. But, there's no question that there's an awful lot of pressure off our shoulders, and we realize that, but I've just finished talking to the guys and pointing out that we have played 7 pretty good hockey games against them, and we're behind in the standings, and we want to close that gap as far as personal standings are concerned, and we would like to finish the season series with them with a good, strong effort here tonight.
If you had your druthers, if you were the script writer here, would you have maybe preferred them to come in with still some chances for the championship, and you be the one to put the final nail in the coffin, or does it not make much difference?
I don't ever like to give a sucker a second chance.
All right, but let me ask you this. Norris Division champion, that has kind of a nice ring to it, doesn't it?
Well, I think really, that we were talking about that during the day today, that we can remember the day we walked in our first day of training camp, and if somebody would have told me that we'd have finished with 100 points or more and won our division, I would have been very surprised, and I would have checked, what hospital he escaped from. But after 7 months or so, or whatever it is it took for us to get here, I think that there isn't a better deserving bunch than the guys in the dressing room, because it was a different type of year for them, a different type of coach, different way of coaching, different style of discipline. Everything was new, and probably hard to take at times, but I think the only reward that you get for working and doing the job that you're supposed to do, the biggest reward you can get is success. And I think this is the first part of the success. An 80-game schedule, and you finish first among your group, that's quite an honor. I know the playoffs are coming up. That's a different situation completely. But our guys have adjusted and have certainly done more than their share. I think guys have done double duty, and I don't think we in this league have a better disciplined hockey team than the group that we've got here.
I'm wondering about these next 3 games now. They're certainly anything but meaningless. You don't want to lose any momentum as you head into the playoffs and whatnot. What I'm curious about is how you approach it now. If you may change anything, and what I'm thinking of, you've got a couple of guys who haven't seen much action lately. Some guys who have been in the press box, and I'm wondering if you're thinking now that maybe you'll try to get them a little ice before the regular season comes to an end as a little insurance policy maybe for playoff time. Are you thinking that way at all?
Well, we've discussed that at length today. I don't think tonight was the night to make changes with the North Stars coming in here. We will insert the 3 players on the weekend. Whether we do it all 3 of them together, we could end up playing St. Louis, and we don't want to look bad on the weekend, and I don't think these players would make us look bad, but we've got to show St. Louis that we're a force to reckon with. At the same time, I want to see these people get some ice time, because you're absolutely right. We will need them in the playoffs, and it's best for them to be ready. St. Louis still has something going with Toronto, and we have to be fair to everybody and play the best possible people at all times. So for tonight, we had got ourselves ready to play the North Stars for first place tonight, and I think the guys that played last week and those other games up there certainly deserve to be in the lineup tonight. And Saturday there will be 1, 2, or 3 changes. We don't know, but all 3 guys will definitely play either Saturday or Sunday or both days.
Final thing now, you'd mentioned the game in Minnesota, and it's too bad. I think we both talked about it. It's too bad a great hockey game had the cloud hanging overhead of that big brawl. But and I would certainly assume there's a lot of anticipation of that, a similar type of thing happening tonight. A lot of fighting, maybe not necessarily clearing the benches, but. In your experience, you've seen this type of thing a lot more than I have, but the times that I've seen it, it seems like the times when there's a lot of anticipation about physical play and fighting and that, it usually is toned down more than people would expect. Would that be your experience, too, that it'll probably, hopefully, be just a good, strong hockey game tonight?
Well, we're looking at it that way. The league, Brian O'Neill and Scotty Morrison had a meeting with us today. They had a meeting with Minnesota earlier, and they talked to us about it. And my point to them was, after talking was over, that we are glad to play hockey. I think you haven't seen a better disciplined team this year as far as playing hockey is concerned. And I pointed out the facts and all our records for the year, and I deplored the brawl last week, and I don't like to be part of one. But I also told them that if there's any nonsense tonight by the other hockey team, but don't expect us to turn the other cheek, because that's not how we operate. We are not going to be out here to try and promote a brawl or try and provoke the opposition into a brawl. But if the opposition acts a little bit stupid or like that, our hockey players are not going to run away and hide. I think hockey was sold this year in this building with good, strong hockey, good skating, good aggressive hockey, and I think the fans were entertained, and that's why they came out. They saw 20 guys working their butts off to give out a good performance, and when we didn't, we were the first ones to know, because we realized it. I don't think that the majority of fans are here to watch a brawl. Now, a lot was made about it, and it's an unfortunate part of hockey. It happens, but we are not in the fight game. We're not in the fight promotion game. There might be some fights tonight, I don't know, but we're certainly going to do our best to play a good hockey game here tonight.
Congratulations on achieving your first goal of the year.
Thanks very much, Pat.
That's Orval Tessier. You've been listening to the Hawk pregame show. Now stay tuned for Chicago Blackhawk hockey.
Back in Chicago Stadium, here's the first period summary now. The only goal of the hockey game so far came rather early in the game. The Blackhawks, after killing off a Minnesota power play, got a power play chance of their own. Here's what happened. There's Crossman feeding away to Wilson at center. Doug Wilson will send it in. Around to the near board, Larmer. Steve Larmer, stick handling into the corner. Now back to the net, Savard moving in front. Savard, the shot, and a big rebound is scored. That is Savard. Picked up his own rebound and jammed it by Gil Melange. And the Blackhawks have taken a 1-0 lead. A power play goal for Dennis Savard, his 34th of the year, assisted by Doug Wilson and Steve Larmer at the 3:57 mark for the only scoring in the game so far. The penalties to Rich Preston for interference at the 55-second mark, but our star Steve Payne got 2 for holding and 2 for unsportsmanlike conduct. at 2:18. Then Gordy Roberts and Rich Preston had a little tiff. Each got 2 for high sticking and 5 for fighting at 8:07. Minnesota's Hartsburg for interference at 11:38. Dave Feemster for charging at 14:47, and Bobby Smith for hooking at 17:22. With that penalty list, you don't think Bruce Hood's going to try to keep a lid on this one? He is indeed going to try to, I would think, call nearly everything that is even borderline, and the first period would indicate that he's doing just that. Bruce Hood, the senior official in the National Hockey League. The shots on goal in the first period, the Blackhawks had 16, the North Stars had 7. All in all, a pretty good period for the Chicago Blackhawks. Minnesota had maybe 1 or 2 decent scoring chances. I wouldn't say that they had anything that was a glorious scoring opportunity, but they did have a couple of decent chances. Bannerman closed the door on them. And at the other end of the ice, the Blackhawks had, in addition to the one they scored, Billy Gardner had a couple of tremendous opportunities. And there was Savard with a rebound chance and a couple of other opportunities as well. So Gilles Melange has been a lot busier in the North Star goal than Bannerman has been in the Chicago goal. And it's reflected on the scoreboard. At the end of 1, it's Chicago 1 and Minnesota nothing. We'll be back with Skip Myslinski in the Tribune after this timeout on Talk Radio 56. There's the second period summary now. There was no scoring in the period, although each team had a couple of tremendous opportunities. 4 minor penalties called on each team in the period, and the shots, 15 for Chicago, 12 for Minnesota. So the 2-period totals, the Blackhawks 31 shots on goal, and the North Stars with 19. Your score at the end of 40 minutes, the Blackhawks 1, the North Stars nothing. We'll have the third period coming up here shortly. Dave Baum now has all the sports news of the day for you. 1-0 Hawks in what's been a dandy of a game. I'm Pat Foley on Talk Radio 56.
Thank you, Pat.
Period. Minnesota North Stars 11 for a total of 30. Blackhawks 12 for a total of 43. This is the first time since 1974 that the Blackhawks have had 2 shutouts back-to-back. Now the Robinson Jewelers Budweiser's 3 stars of the game. The game's number 3 star, Chicago's Rick Patterson. The number 2 star of the game, Chicago's Tom Lysiak. And the number 1 star of the game with his 4th shutout of the season, the Budweiser Robinson Jeweler number 1 star of the game, Chicago's Murray Bannerman.
Final score, 5-0 Blackhawks, and we'll have the game summary after these messages. And Foley back at Chicago Stadium. Here's the game summary now. 18,927 happily now on their way home. They had a ball here tonight as the game developed, but it was a very close game for most of it until the third period. The only scoring in the first 2 periods came in the early minutes of the game when the Hawks had a power play chance. Dennis Savard scored his 34th of the year on that power play and his own rebound from Doug Wilson and Steve Larmer at 3:57 for the only scoring in the first period. The Hawks out shooting Minnesota 16-7 in the first, and they outshot the North Stars 15-12 in the second period, but still there was no more scoring. So the teams went into the third period with a 1-0 Blackhawk lead, and certainly anybody's hockey game. But the floodgates began to open at the 5:51 mark. Here's the way it started. Now controlled by Kurt Frazier at center. Frazier into the North Star end for Ludwig. Trying to move in front, had to spin back to the board. Centering. Oh, big save by Melange. Frazier had a great chance, and Melange a blocker save. Ludwig in the far corner with it now. For Higgins. Shooting. He scores! Tim Higgins off the knee from Ludwig, and Frazier with a forechecking. The Blackhawks on Tim Higgins' goal have taken a 2-0 lead. Higgins with his 13th of the year from Ludwig and Frazier at 5:51 for a 2-0 lead. And it stayed that way only about 2 more minutes. And here's what happened. Doug Wilson for Lysiak over the line. Lysiak moving in the drive. He scores! Tom Lysiak from the top of the far circle. And the Blackhawks with a couple of quick ones in the third period have taken a 3-0 lead. Tom Lysiak was number 23 from Doug Wilson and Bob Murray at the 8:09 mark. A 3-0 Blackhawk lead. Stayed that way until only a little under 5 minutes left in the hockey game, but the Blackhawks struck again. Daryl Sutter at center ice. He comes in over the line nicely, lets it go. He scores! Daryl Sutter walks right around Randy Belichick, the rookie just out of Providence College, who was just signed yesterday by Minnesota, and they don't make too many moves like that in college hockey. Sutter turned Belichick right around, then blew it by Malash on the glove side. 4-0 Chicago. Daryl Sutter with his 30th of the year. He becomes the 4th Hawk to have at least 30 goals. Sutter from Lysiak at 15-18 for a 4-0 lead, and just a couple of minutes later, the icing was put on the cake. Ryan Bellows gave it right to Greg Fox. Back over the line. Frazier, the drive. He scores! Kurt Frazier banks it in off the near post. And the last 4 Hawk goals have all gone in by the gloved hand of Milan. It's 5-0 Chicago. Frazier with his 12th of the year from Greg Fox at 17-15 to end what turned into a blowout, but let me tell you, it was a very close game for a long, long time. But a 4-goal third period wound up everything here tonight for the Blackhawks, and they sail away with a 5-0 victory. The Hawks out shooting the North Stars 12-11 in the third period, and for the game, 43 Chicago shots and 30 for the North Stars. Again, the 3 Stars, Ricky Patterson, just an outstanding penalty-killing job tonight when he was out there in that capacity, and on his regular shift, he played well in that situation, too. Rick Patterson, the 3rd star tonight. Tommy Lysiak, another typical Lysiak game, strong at both ends of the ice. He did score with a goal and an assist tonight. He was the 2nd star. And Murray Bannerman with his 4th shutout of the year, the 2nd consecutive Hawk shutout after Esposito got one Sunday. Bannerman kicking out all 30 shots he faced, a couple of them in rather spectacular fashion to preserve his shutout. And he was named the game's 1st star. There's your summary. 5-0 Hawks, your final, and we'll have some final comments after this time out on I&D. I think we'll just give it to Murray Bannerman for general all-around strong play. A couple of situations developed. I would say that probably the 2nd period was his most difficult period, and he made a couple of original saves and rebound stops. So Murray Bannerman tonight, the Midas Touch Award, and a contribution in his name will be made to Children's Memorial Hospital from the people at Midas Muffler. The Blackhawks, with their 46th win of the year. The last time they had that many victories was the 71-72 season. 46 wins, 22 losses, 10 ties. 102 points now for Chicago. The North Stars remain at 96 points, and they have just one more game to play that Saturday night in Los Angeles. This is the first time the Hawks have had back-to-back shutouts since '74. So it's been nearly a decade since this has happened. Tony Esposito whitewashing the Red Wings on Sunday, and Murray Bannerman coming right back tonight with a 5-0 whitewash of the North Stars. Bannerman's 4th shutout of the year, and the team's 5th shutout of the season. And Minnesota had not been shut out all year long until tonight, their 79th game of the year. So the Black boy, you know, I mentioned it earlier in the game with Orval on the pregame. You listen around town today, some of the sports shows on different radio stations, and some of the TV guys saying that, well, the North Stars lost last night, and it takes a little luster off of the game tonight because they thought it might be a game for first place. Well, there's about 19,000 fans driving home now that I think you'd have a hard time convincing that this game meant little. To them, it meant a lot. To the Blackhawks, it meant a lot. The percentages would tell you that the Hawks are going to meet the North Stars along the way in the playoffs if they both get by the first round. It looks like Chicago will be playing St. Louis, and Minnesota will be playing Toronto. And you know the one thing, the North Stars have had trouble with both those teams. Against Toronto, Minnesota won 3 games, and the Maple Leafs won 5 in their season series. And against St. Louis, Minnesota won the first 3 games they played, and in the next 5 games in a row, the North Stars had the lead, only to have St. Louis come back and tie them 5 straight times in the third period. So St. Louis never did beat Minnesota, but they tied them 5 times in a row, coming from behind every time to do it. So really, you can say that the difference, and maybe one of the things that decided first place in this Norris Division race, was the Blackhawks fattening up on the lower teams in the Norris Division while the North Stars had trouble. They were 3-5 against Toronto, and Minnesota was 3-0-5 against St. Louis. So the Hawks fattened up on both of those teams, and the North Stars were not able to. But the season series with St. Louis not quite over. We'll be in St. Louis Saturday night for the start of a home-and-home series, which winds up the regular season Saturday in St. Louis, Sunday night back here in Chicago Stadium. Then the playoffs begin next week, 1 week from tonight, Wednesday night, right here in the stadium, followed by Thursday night for Game 2 of the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Quickly, some other scores. The New York Islanders blew out Washington 7-1 in Washington. And those 2 teams are going to meet in the first round, so the Islanders delivered a stern message to the Washington Capitals tonight, 7-1 in Washington. The Toronto Maple Leafs beat Detroit 4-2 in Detroit, and Montreal in Pittsburgh was defeated. The Penguins 3 and Montreal 2.